further ado, it's time for me to introduce our opening keynote speaker. Dominic has joined us all the way from Manchester today. He is the founding partner of Fireside Ventures and was the co-founder of social media company Social Chain. He is a 30-year-old entrepreneur and mental health and sobriety advocate. He's currently a founding partner of investment fund Fireside Ventures and ex-COO of global marketing agency Social Chain. Along with his co-founder and fellow university dropout Steve Bartlett, Dominic helped grow Social Chain to a 300 million turnover business with 750 staff in offices around the world, including New York City, Berlin, and London. After building a giant global client portfolio that includes the likes of Apple, Amazon, McDonald's, and the BBC, the pair took the company in public in 2019 and then exited in late 2020. Post-exit, Dom founded Fireside Ventures, which invests in founders who are looking to rapidly scale their businesses. And through this venture, he passionately uses his experience and wealth of knowledge of building and scaling successful businesses to nurture new talent and support other entrepreneurs on their journey, both financially and emotionally. So we're going to do a bit of a Q&A. It's a fireside chat, so I've got my glowing cube as my fireplace. And please give a very, very warm welcome to Dominic McGregor. Can you tell me a little bit about Social Chain? What is it? Share your story.
Yeah, so Social Chain, social media marketing company, and kind of started in my university bedroom when I was 19 years old. And basically I was this kind of young kid who was on social media posting kind of funny things on my own status. And a lot of my friends were basically calling me annoying. You know, I was there updating every single day about what I was doing. But then this thing called Twitter and X kind of came about, and I found it fascinating that you could keep up to date with like celebrities, and you know, Stephen Fry would reply to normal people, and it was just kind of this making the world feel a little bit smaller. And while on it, I kind of thought, oh, there's kind of some funny content on here about football and other things, and I was like, oh, maybe I could make a community around funny stuff. You know, I kind of believe I'm funny. No one else does. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a go and see actually if I can validate that. And decided to create it around my life at university. So I called it Problems at University. And that was sharing problems that, you know, all students go through. So for example, realizing how expensive cheese is for the first time, and you're like, oh my goodness, how am I going to live? So I started sharing relevant things, and you know, very quickly it started to build a bit of a following up, and I got about 20,000 people at my fingertips. I was like, this is so cool. So I'm literally there in lectures, just looking for motivation. You know, basically my whole life came around like creating content and just taking inspiration from things that I was doing in my day or my friends were doing. And this is back in like 2013, so 10 years ago now. And if you spoke to any single kind of business or brand about social media, their entire like mindset was that, oh, it's going to go away. You know, if you had a marketing director who'd been there for 10 years, their entire experience had been like seeing like the Internet of Things come, and, you know, Bebo, MySpace, Friends Reunited, these platforms would come out of nowhere and then in 2 years' time would disappear. So like trying to convince them to get actually invested into Facebook, which at the time was, you know, so like in its infancy, it was exactly the same as that. So what I kind of along that journey met Steve. So Steve was basically building a website which was like Gumtree for students, and we came together and realized that there was an opportunity to, as I say, take that to brands and speak to them about what social media could be. And, you know, ridiculously naive at the time, and I think, you know, we were both 19 years old running into boardrooms and trying to tell people that social media is going to be the future and it's going to be here to stay, and as I say, pretty much getting rejected out of every single room we walked into because these marketing directors were not convinced in the same way we were. So, you know, I think looking back at it, we were right. Social media was here to stay, and maybe those marketing directors were a little bit wrong. What happened was the kind of wave of social media came, and Instagram and Snapchat and all these other platforms, you know, became part of our kind of like digital inventory of life. And we were in the right place at the right time and managed to navigate the kind of tidal wave impact of social media, and rode that wave all the way out to exit in 2020.
Amazing. And is it true you met Stephen on Twitter?
Yeah, so he followed the account, and I was basically speaking to one of my friends one day. I was like, oh, I'm going to put an email in my account so people can find me. So I put in the email address reachstudents@hotmail.com, thinking, you know what, if people want to reach students, that's the email address they'll use. Yeah. And I got two emails in the first day from people, and Steve's was the second one. So I was like, okay, For some reason, I didn't reply to the first one, but I replied.
Yeah, what happened to that guy?
I don't know, but I replied to Steve's, and I was like, okay, this sounds good, let's meet. So off the back of that, one email from him finding me on Twitter, we went on to go and do something quite special.
Amazing. And did you both kind of have the same vision in the beginning?
I think it's, as a 19-year-old, it's very hard to kind of talk around like a vision. We're so naive in the sense that we don't understand the world of business, but we understand this very small sliver, which is social media. And our belief, and a bit of a deluded belief, was that the social media thing was going to be the future. So did we have a vision for what a company was going to look, or how we were going to build out a product, or what a structure was going to look like? Probably not. But we had a thesis together, which we shared, that we knew social media was going to be really, really important in the future of life. So if we are experts in this sector, I compare these things to, I call them frontiers. We always have new age frontiers. We're currently in one which is AI, and we've just left one which is blockchain. And you can be in these frontiers with different degrees of success. If you were in blockchain last year and you were at the cutting edge of things, you're a little bit irrelevant right now, because it's kind of come and gone, but it's not had the massive impact that potentially people are saying that AI could have. And social media was that frontier in 2013, 2014, and we were at the front of it. We were the guys that were getting the axes going to mine the gold back in 2013, and there was a very strong chance that it didn't stick, and that us spending that time growing communities on Facebook and Twitter was going to be a complete waste of time. But fortunately, it was a frontier which kind of did stick. So, I think we knew that if we were experts in this area, and we were, which is very, very rare for a 19-year-old to say they're an expert in an area. If you guys go to hospital and the 19-year-old surgeon walks in and says, I'm an expert, I think you're all getting up off this table and walking out, because it's not possible. But we were in a situation where, with social media, because it was so new, you could be an expert at 19. So you could walk into a room with a marketing director and say you are an expert because you were. So yeah, I think that that thesis we shared in terms of believing social media was going to be powerful in the future was our vision, effectively. And a lot of things materialized in the right way to make it successful.
And did you have kind of a business plan in the beginning? Had you had experience doing that, or was it, were you winging it?
I'd love to say we sat there one day and we kind of created this vision and structure of what we were going to build, but reality was we were just going as we went along, taking what you'd probably call feedback from customers and understanding the world, and then shaping our response to that based on what they were saying to us. And you talk about business plans, but I remember the day we first were offered investment. So one of our clients offered us investment because they were kind of so impressed with the work we were doing for them, and they brought their lawyer in from a proper London law firm, sat there in a suit and tie, and we're literally like probably in the same clothes I'm wearing now, but just like dressed down. And he's like, well, he was drawing up the heads of terms for the investment for us to look at. Even I can't take this to my seniors, partners, without a business plan. We've never done an investment or an investment document which isn't got a business plan to it. So I'm sorry, I can't let any of you sign this until we've got a business plan. So we were like looking at each other like, okay, we're going to have to make one. So us and Steve and I and one of the guys, we went downstairs to Bill's for lunch because we had a break, and literally on the back of the menu, which was paper, we got a red pen and a green pen, green for money in, red for money out, and started scribbling down some numbers that we kind of thought were going to make sense of what we could do if we raised some money. And he actually then was like, okay, this will do. I get what you guys could do. It's all friendly here. So he stapled that to the back of the heads of terms document and then submitted that to their law firm. And that was kind of our first business plan to raise money. Yeah, and I've got a picture of it still from he left the firm maybe a year ago. I used him personally, and we used him for a lot of kind of transactions. And he made sure before he left that he got a copy of the business plan, because he's like, I will tell people about that for the rest of my life. Oh,
that's amazing. Just a quick one. Sorry, Paul, can I have a timer on the clock, please? Just realised we'll end up talking all afternoon quite happily. What sort of challenges did you face kind of in those early days? Was it just you and Steve for a long time? Did you grow a team?
Yeah, I think the big challenge is when to hire, who to hire, how to hire. And we spent a lot, the early days with ourselves, but what we kind of realised is there was other people like us who were in this social media sector, who were kids at home, who were running big communities. So we tried to bring everyone together, and we had a couple of people who were at university, and they were kind of making it a bit of a side hustle, and what we kind of built over the first couple of months before we kind of professionalised the business was a network of individuals who were like-minded like us. So when we got the investment, the kind of first thing was like, okay, we need to build out a team. And we knew that if we were to bring in other people like us and other skills that we might be missing, that was kind of fundamentally how we were going to scale. So a lot of the use of funds was to shore up the fact that we were going to hire people. And the difficult part is convincing them that this is going to be something. You have to have like real conviction that this is going to be something. A little bit of delusion, but mainly conviction that actually this is the right path for them. Because 19, 20 years old, these people we were speaking to had the option of going to university, completing the university degree, or joining, two young kids with an idea. And I think that was the most difficult part, was trying to convince them that this was going to be the way we were going to go. And then I guess secondly to that, the same piece around clients. How can we convince someone who's been in the industry much more longer than us and is much wiser than us that, what we're talking about and the little piece of the internet we're focusing on is relevant for their big brand. So it's also then adjusting to actually having a team and running a team and managing a team. And I think, if you look at my life, a year before we had 20 people, I was struggling to get out of bed before a 3 p.m. lecture because I only had like 4 lectures in second year university. And that transition of like going from student to, I guess, manager leader, like as much as like we are elastic as people and we grow, in that short space of time to go from someone, as I say, was just a typical student, going out most nights to actually then having responsibilities of a team and people depending on them was very, very quick growth.
And how do you navigate change like that? I mean, you and Steve are quite different in terms of your personality, and it makes sense with those co-founders that you're not just two of the same people, but actually you complement each other's skills and you each bring something to the business. But how do you navigate going from, well, it's just you and a friend and you've got this awesome idea and you're smashing it, to, oh, hang on, we need to take our first hire, and suddenly I'm managing a team of 50 and then it's scaling quickly. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, and the crazy thing is every single month, you look at the payroll costs and they go up, and people start getting mortgages because they've got jobs, and you're like, oh my God, like you start to feel a bit of personal responsibility. And the truth is, we didn't manage that very, very well. We had our vices. Both of us had our kind of ways of coping, which weren't healthy. So Steve had, he's talked about it quite a lot, but big social isolation where he'd just literally just go home on weekends and not see anyone and, try and cope in those ways. Mine was drinking. I kind of used that as an outlet to kind of forget and numb the pain. And reality is the problems got bigger in the company, just normal problems now, which are completely manageable for me. But as a 21-year-old, they weren't manageable, in terms of handling people's problems and set an example, leadership, everything that came around with the business, couldn't handle that. And unfortunately, got a situation where that was too much and effectively broke down and, became addicted to alcohol, became dependent on it, and had so many kind of like mini crisis issues where I hit rock bottom. And it was only in those situations when, you start asking professionals for help in terms of what I should be doing, that you realise that, you start to learn about yourself. And the whole time we were in the business, we were so kind of like throwing ourselves full steam at it. We never thought about ourselves, and we never thought about our well-being and like where our limits are and how we can cope as people. So the work I did with my therapist was to understand more about me, how I should handle things, how I should work. What is the best structure for me to actually tackle problems and work with the team and handle challenges. And part of that was removing alcohol from my life, but part of it was building a world and building a structure which optimized me for the company.
And was there a turning point in that moment? Because you've both been through so much, and you get all the challenges with the startup. You're responsible for suddenly a load of people's mortgages and family life and all those sorts of things. That obviously led to this sort of dependency. But actually, you did have a turning point, didn't you?
Yeah, I had I'm writing a book at the moment, and I call two things. There's this idea called glass bottoms, which like you fall through a glass bottom the same way you break through a glass ceiling. And like on the way down, any addict has a number of glass bottoms where they think they're at the end, and actually something happens again, and they actually go through the next layer until they hit a real rock bottom. And I don't think change comes about the power. The quote is the change only happens when the feeling of staying the same is as powerful as the feeling of deriving the change. So you've got to be in a situation where you really need to change yourself and your life. And I was there. I'd alienated friends. My skin had just become horrible. I was drinking like 2 bottles of wine a night at some points, and binging on weekends, and like it was just consuming my life completely. And it turned me into someone that I definitely wasn't. And I think the turning point was 2 things. Was one that we were going through an acquisition conversation at the time with a big company, and the fact that like I wanted to give everything up so I could just go off and drink it alone and get rid of the company and like just go sail off into the sunset and drink. And the fact that during that process, drinking actually led me to insult a number of my friends. Like when I was drunk, I was like, I'm not someone who like wants to just quit and wants to throw it all in for alcohol. I'm not someone who upsets my friends and other people. So like seeing those 2 things happen, I was like, I need to make a change here. And it was when other people actually sat down and told me of like the extent of the problems they were seeing in me that I was like, okay, actually, no, I need to do something about it.
I mean, being a startup founder is really stressful. And even when you go through a period of, okay, I recognize this is stressful, this is not good for me, maybe something's happened, maybe there is a turning point, or maybe it's, whatever it has been, you realize you're not coping perhaps.
Yeah.
When you've got people around you, perhaps a board, investors, your team, people who are trying to strip away your time or apply pressure or expect a level of presenteeism where they want you online all night and all day and at their beck and call, how do you set those boundaries and create that kind of healthy workspace for yourself?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. Like, what I went through then is it's relative. So, like, I was 22 years old and I didn't really understand myself and I couldn't set boundaries, I couldn't set timelines. But like the work I do now and the things I'm involved with now is like probably tenfold more stressful. But because I've kind of, I see it as like a kind of like, again, a threshold where, there's that period of time when you're the most stressed you've ever been. And then once you kind of break through that, everything else you can handle. So like now, like coming back to your question about how do you set those boundaries and how do you handle everyone that's kind of wanting time at you, it comes from understanding yourself and how you work best. You have to understand that as a founder, you've got a commitment and responsibility to these people. You have to fit them into your life, but they also have to fit into your life. And you have to be able to create a structure where, you optimize your life as best as possible. So, for example, with our investors, look, they have a channel which they can communicate to us from. And that channel is a monthly board meeting. And if you want to raise something before that or you want to do it through the proper ways of communication. Don't just WhatsApp me and say, can I see this right now? You have to create a structure where the lines of communication are manageable. Because what was happening to me when I was kind of first in this kind of world was I was just getting bombarded with things all the time, any time of day, from investors, from team, from clients, and it was overwhelming because you think to yourself, which one are you going to tackle first, and how am I going to kind of approach all these kind of issues, and then you end up actually doing all of them very badly. So one of the things that I learned out of it was I need to structure my day, and I structure my week, and I structure my month to be able to handle all these kind of things that are going on. And effectively, what part of that was creating workflows and communication channels for them to speak to me and me to speak to them in a meaningful way. So, one-to-ones with the team on a monthly basis, they know in those situations that they can have an open space to talk about any of their problems. Board meetings, management meetings every single week so we can talk about issues. And that for me was kind of like a big kind of like just pressure taken off my shoulder because I didn't have to tackle everything at once. It actually gave me a set time to be able to address problems and work as effectively as possible. And then also that was then me putting in some me time as well to actually get on with other tasks that I had to solve. And that was really, really important for me because I never kind of before I'd structured my day where actually I blocked out 2.5 hours just for me to do something for myself and tackle the things that I know I needed to do without anyone else.
And fiercely protect that time.
Exactly.
When you sort of started out and you kind of made your first hire, were you quite comfortable with delegating and letting control of the things that you've been doing for so long go?
Oh, not a chance. Oh God, no. And this is again a massive learning was that you as a business owner you think you have all the answers. I don't know why, but it was young naivety. But we think we knew everything, and then part of the kind of problems that we faced was like not letting people into information. So we were trying to manage a team with giving them limited information, because we were kind of protective over, profit, revenue, cash position, all these kind of things. And we knew that we didn't think we want people to know that. But for us, one of the big things we did was alleviate that by bringing in a management team who had the same kind of incentives we had, who were focused on growing the revenue, growing the profit, but also kind of shared the burden that we were facing when it came to all the issues we were presented. So it kind of went from two of us in a room, and who are two incredibly busy guys who probably actually never get time to talk about the detail, to having 6 people who are kind of all, 4 of them are obsessed over the detail on a daily basis, 2 of us are talking and thinking about big picture and strategy, and it kind of alleviated all the kind of pressures that we were holding on to ourselves. So, my advice now when I invest in founders is like, okay, straight away you need to think about the senior team. We were so young that we were kind of thinking about people to do things, the junior team. So we went, at one point, the average age of our company was like 19 years old. And like, there's, as great as that sounds from a PR perspective, it's a nightmare from an operational perspective. So now kind of the first thing when I talk to founders about where they're going to grow and how they're going to grow is like, you need to think about where you're best, because a lot of founders assume their natural progression is to CEO. And like, I've seen definitely less examples where a founder should be a CEO than where a founder should transition to a different role in the C-suite. Because the CEO role is very, very different to the capabilities that a founder has. And more founders need to be aware of that. So when I speak to founders, the first thing I say is, when you're going to hire a CEO? And their face, they go, you can tell they think, well, I'm going to be the CEO, And then you start talking about like what actually a CEO does versus what a founder can do if you put them in the right situation. And you start to be able to see their eyes change, but actually, yeah, the CEO sounds a little bit more not like fit for me. And that's kind of, I think founders need to understand, and I think that's something that we definitely looked at, is like, what are our gaps? And for us, a big one was the CFO space. We didn't have a CFO. So when we looked at like how we can alleviate pressure from us and how we can alleviate responsibility, we were paranoid about having a finance person in, because we were like, they're going to see what we're doing, they're going to look at numbers. But the reality is they're actually there to help, and that was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So they take that entire side off our plates instead of having to do it and obsess over payroll and cash flow. And that was something, again, we learned the sticky way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's often hard to find a CFO that is somebody kind of who gets your business, but actually, certainly my startup experience, it was a game changer, because it was all this, well, suddenly we're investment ready and they've done our due diligence and we've got our data room, and they just lined up all the ducks that we kind of thought we had, but actually the structure was really important if we were actually going to go out and raise investment.
100%, and I think you look at that kind of, come back to the first hire roles, the 5 senior people you got in the business at, the early stage, 5 people doing things, the finance one is not the focus. You feel like, okay, we need someone in marketing, we need someone in product, but you actually forget that everything is fundamentally underpinned by finance. And like for us, it was a game changer, and it kind of opened our eyes to the possibilities of what having a great finance person can do for a company. And it's now, again, alongside the kind of CEO kind of conversations I have with people, is about getting an FD in to understand the business in more premise. And ultimately, what all this does actually is get the founder away from tasks which are not their responsibility, and allows them to go and optimize themselves in areas which can add much more value to the companies, instead of having to try to learn new skills in areas which they're not good at.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Marketing question now, as a marketer. What can startups look for in terms of things like social media? Obviously, we know Twitter and X, that's changing. What are the things, what's the landscape look like now, and how can we benefit from it?
Yeah, and I think I get asked this question all the time about like B2B versus B2C marketing, like what's the difference? And like, a lot of tech companies tend to be B2B, and they go, oh, well, sorry, no, we're a B2B company, so, I don't think in those ways. I'm like, marketing's the same. You're marketing B2B and B2C, I think they're the most diluted comments. You're actually always just marketing to another person, because another company who needs to buy your product or wants to use your product is a person. Just because they work in a business doesn't mean they're not the same person that goes on the weekends and buys consumer goods. They have the same behavior habits. So I always say that, from a marketing perspective, just remember at all times you're speaking to a human. And understanding those humans, understanding their ambitions, their responsibilities, and their agendas is also always what makes a successful sales process. And it tends to be that B2B marketing tends to be quite robotic and quite factual and quite boring. But I think what great tech companies do is humanize their marketing and really appeal to the same way consumer businesses market, and that's where you have real cut through. There are some where, you know, you can get super technical and have great wins, but reality across the board, you've got to remember, you know, you're speaking to a human at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And same with the investment pitching process.
Oh, exactly the same. Yeah, I think coming into the world of VCs, like, there's two things that are kind of really kind of insightful for me. Is like, one, these people's jobs is to deploy money.
Yeah.
That's their ultimate job. You know, they're looking for you as much as you're looking for them. Same as angel investors, they're looking for opportunities as much as you are looking for them. So like, I think it was time to fund who are kind of, you know, putting the marketplace together. That's the case. You know, you're trying to find people, they're trying to find you. So people think of investors as a big scary word, but really they are always open and looking at opportunities. So they are human beings at the end of the day, and they're, you know, getting to know them on a personal relationship is always better than just sending cold emails. You know, I've got a story about I call it the £400,000 pen, and one of my investors now, I knew him, didn't know him that well, but he IPO'd his business. On the day of his IPO, I sent him a personalised Hugo Boss pen, because I looked on his Instagram and I saw a picture of him wearing Hugo Boss. I was like, okay, he likes Hugo Boss. So I sent him a Hugo Boss pen saying, congratulations on the IPO. And he wrote back and said, oh, thank you so much, really appreciate it. And that kind of bloomed to, me getting in the foot in the door to go and take him for a drink and all that kind of stuff. And then when it came to starting the next business, Fearless, we're looking for investors. And I said, do you want to invest? And he went, yeah. And he wrote a check for £400,000. And that, he wrote it with a pen I actually gave him, which is great.
Full circle.
But that would never have happened without me actually in a moment thinking, oh, this guy's done something great. Like, let me do something for him. And that is where I think the value of human to human in investment can be so valuable. So, it's we're all people. We've all got motives and we've all got things we like, and we all like to feel important. So always remember that when in speaking to investors and when marketing.
So what point did you and Steve kind of realise you were thinking about exiting the social chain?
I think very, very early. I think the idea of, for me, running a social media-based company at 30 wasn't something I wanted to do. We kind of knew that this was like, we always said it was our university. This was our learning experience. Let's learn as much as we can. If it goes to zero, we've learned. That's valuable in itself. If it doesn't go to zero, then that's incredible. So I think from our perspective, it was literally go fast and try and go far, and just throw yourself into every single deep end. When it came to opening new offices in USA and Germany and all that kind of stuff, it was literally a learning experience. So I think that when we felt like we were ready and we've done enough learning in this area, and we feel like we knew marketing and we felt like we knew clients and we felt like we knew enough, we knew that we wanted to go and do something different ourselves. And I think a little bit from my perspective was that falling out of love with social media. I saw, one of our big clients in 2019 was a business called TikTok. We were responsible for launching them in the UK. And we saw the numbers, we saw the kind of user time, we saw what was coming down the line, and I sat there thinking to myself, I was like, do I really have to go and learn TikTok to go and sell it to clients? Do I want to do that? And for me, it's like a moment in time when I was like, the waves are shifting, and I am not the person to go on the next journey, and I don't want to be the person to go on the next journey. So it comes back to, I guess, understanding me and what I wanted to do. And a lot of entrepreneurs talk about when the time's ready. There's this kind of 7-year thing at the moment where businesses seem to go after 7 years. That's the average. We were 7 years when we left, and it gives you enough of a cycle to grow, learn, and see the world differently and look at a different opportunity.
And I suppose the exit, we talk about it in startup world, and there's the whole sort of unicorn wave that we talked about as well. And one of my favourite sayings is, a unicorn is just a horse in a party hat.
Yep.
But it does feel like, all roads lead to the exit. But what does it actually feel like when you exit?
It's a little bit crazy, because I remember that, so we'd gone through the kind of process with the board, and it was all kind of done. And the thing was, we weren't telling people we were leaving. We were telling people we had left. So the day we told people in the business, it wasn't that we're going, it's that we've gone.
Ooh.
So that's the nature of it. So we did a video, and I remember that morning, it was a Monday morning, I looked at my WhatsApps, and the top 25 people were all people from the business. So I was like, oh God, like, this is my life. This is everything I've done since forever. So we pressed the go live button on the video, messages roll in, LinkedIn posts go out, and like for like 2-3 days, everyone's messaging you. It's like a combination of like, oh my God, congratulations, what's going on? Oh my God. And then like by the Friday, like it was like silence, because you're no longer useful to anyone in the company.
Oof.
No one needs you. Like,
how does that feel?
Like empty, like really empty. I was looking at my dog like, at least you need me. Like at your breakfast, yeah? And, you know, what it is, it's the removal of purpose. And I think for so long, and I think my entire life really, from 19, my entire professional life, that's all I knew. And that was my entire purpose. So I didn't appreciate the wave that would come afterwards of like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? So like a bit of panic sets in, a bit of like, you know, you go into a little bit of like overcompensation drive of like feeling like you need to be busy. My wife's looking at me like, my girlfriend at the time, my wife's looking at me like, you going to do anything today? And I'm like, oh, I'll just go for a 3-hour bike ride. Like, and then you realize, it took me about maybe like 3 months to be like, okay, actually, I'm ready to get and do something. I need that kind of like, I realized I love business, I love people, and I think it really helped me shape like what I wanted to do next. And yeah, so how it actually feels, yeah, you know, I think all founders fixate on the exit from an early stage. They think about what it means from a financial situation and from like a personal situation. But like for me, I really kind of like, this is probably where it kind of I taught that I learned that I loved it. It's like what I craved the entire time through Social Chain was just some peace. Like 2 weeks on a beach with no one to contact me, and I got that, and I was so completely unsatisfied. So like I realized that I wasn't craving the 2 weeks on the beach. That wasn't what I was looking for in life. What I actually loved was the chaos of what we were doing every single day, with a bit more control and a bit more breaks in it. But I didn't want the beach. I didn't want the 2 weeks sat there doing nothing. I didn't want to be uncontactable. I wanted to feel like I'm doing something, and I'm building something, that I'm creating something. So yeah, it very quickly learned that there has to be something else, and there's going to be another business.
So if you could go back and tell 20-year-old Dom anything, what bit of advice would you give him?
God, 20-year-old Dom, very different person 10 years ago. I think, look, the advice I always kind of think I would like to think was important was like, I really paradox about this, yeah, because the drinking thing for me was like the best thing that ever happened to me. So like I would wish 20-year-old Dom to like figure out he's going to have an alcohol problem quicker.
Right.
You know, because that changed me as a person. That really helped me grow. And I think for me, like doing like the studies of addiction, for me it was like at some point I was always going to have that problem. And the quicker I had it, the better. I could have had it at 40, but like having it at 22, 23 was much better. So like I think my advice would be go out, party harder, and you know, mess up your life a bit more, and then learn from it.
We're going to go on some audience questions shortly. So if you have got questions for Dom, please pop them in Slido. But on the, I suppose moving forward, you've got Fearless Adventures now. It's kind of the next project you're helping other founders. And this is kind of a question, because we're quite a regional tech hub. You know, we've got Bristol sort of 3 hours up the road, but there's a lot of little tech hubs kind of around Cornwall. And, you know, you have a similar thing we talked earlier about Manchester tech scene and Liverpool. You know, there's a lot happening in the north as well. But as a region, how does a region become kind of a tech hub? And, you know, what can we do to support founders outside of London?
Yes, and, you know, I'm probably one of the most pro-regions people out there. You know, I detest London. The best thing about London is leaving. You know, that's what I believe. And there's a lot of reasons for it. You know, when you look at when we raised our first investment, we were based in Hammersmith, but then we started to look at analysing how far the investment could take us, and we only raised £300,000 in our first round. So you know, it's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. You know, although I did feel like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with like golden ticket kind of vibe when I got the check. But it was, you know, and I feel very, you know, I got about 20-year-old Dom, you know, at the time that was the most amount of money he'd ever seen in his life. But now, you know, when you look at the factors of the world, it doesn't feel like that much money, and it wouldn't be a very big seed round. So, but when you looked at that, and you looked at how many people could hire, the cost of an office space, kind of ongoing costs of running the business, in London it gave us like 6 months runway, and we'd have failed. we would have failed because we didn't figure it out for the first year. So going out of London and moving to Manchester, we got this amazing office space for a quarter of the price. We could put a slide in there, a ball pit. We could hire people, and even doing all that crazy stuff, it still gave us a much longer runway. So without that, we wouldn't have worked. We'd have been another London Shoreditch startup, which would have failed. So when thinking about where founders start a business, I don't know what the reason is to start a business in London. I can't think about it. No one's given me an answer yet. And people talk about community and network, but that exists elsewhere. So when you look at a region, what does create a ecosystem, and how do you grow an ecosystem? I think the best ecosystems have been built from having one or two case studies of success, and that's where the chicken and egg situation comes. Do you need the funding or do you need the founder first? And I always believe that wherever great businesses are, funding will come to, but the founders determine where those businesses are. So we talked about Edinburgh. Edinburgh as a tech scene completely changed because of Skyscanner.
Yeah.
And that as a single business has probably, revolutionised that entire region. Social chain in our sense. I look at the team in the early days that have gone on to found businesses in Manchester. There's 8 or 10 people from the social chain team that have gone on to start businesses in Manchester. And these people were from all over the country, but we brought them to Manchester, and then they started new businesses. So if you have the founder and you can attract founders to an area, and you can then attract more great talent in the early stages, that is the kind of catalyst that can create a great region. We've also, another example is we've seen it in Birmingham with Gymshark, what they've done from making that the place to go for fast-moving consumer goods. So, it's really, really, really kind of like clear for me that regions need to do whatever they can to attract entrepreneurs. And if you attract those entrepreneurs with great businesses and then the funding comes, you can use those as kind of the pillars of building a great ecosystem.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, we'll open it up to questions. Gary is at the back of the room with a microphone. So I'm going to hand over to Gary to...
Hello. Okay, yes. So we've got loads of excellent questions. I'll kind of run through some of them all. I did think about getting my steps in and taking the microphone around, but I don't want to. Firstly, thank you to Dan, Tech Southwest, a really good one, probably kind of leading on from what you were already talking about. He says, we're at a tech festival over the edge of the world. How can the power of connection put those on the fringes at the heart of conversation and opportunity?
Yeah, and I think, we talk about, it's mentioned about being on the fringes of the world there, but actually with social media and the internet, we're actually all in the same place. So when I go on LinkedIn, the first thing, it doesn't say this post was from someone in Cornwall. It's just a post about a business. So actually, we might feel geographically far apart, but with our phones and technology, we're closer than ever. So, look at those means where people are connecting in the world and playing there. You asked me about marketing. How do you make yourself feel closer together with people? Well, that's what the internet's for, and that's what it's done. So, those areas make the world a lot smaller. But also, you've got great things here. I'm 45 minutes from Liverpool, but I'm here today. I could have been at Liverpool slushed, but I'm down here, and there's a charm to areas, and there's things to play off and things to trade on, which other areas don't have. And come back to the point around how do you attract entrepreneurs? We're speaking to Holly earlier about why I live here, why do people live here, and there's so much charm to it that you need to play on that more.
So this may mean something to you, but this one interests me. So I don't know if it will, but here we go. What's your whoop score or whoop score today?
Let's have a look.
Okay, it means something.
It means to me, it's the fitness band. What is my? Do you want my recovery?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Yeah. 97. 8 hours 29. 8 hours 29 minutes sleep. Went to bed last night at 9:43, woke up at 6:55.
There you go, Ollie.
So I'm going for a run later if you want to come.
Another excellent question. Darren Flow IT, thank you. He's put in what motivates you the most today?
Yeah, motivation's a really interesting question. And it's kind of shifted. I think when we first started the company, motivation was very much about proving other people wrong. We dropped out of university. We had people who, I wouldn't say are haters or people, but there was a lot of question of why are you doing this? Why are you not going to finish your degree? Mm-hmm. So proving them wrong became motivation, and I realized that was completely terrible motivation. So then I started to like think about myself and my own standards and how I should be like my own motivation. And then I kind of realized that that's great and that's got me so far. But then I realized that now the best motivation for me is like seeing other people successful. So I actually kind of, strangely enough, live vicariously through helping other people be successful. So like with Fearless, our entire model is investing in companies and seeing them solve problems and thrive. Like that just fills me with joy. We've got an academy where we train over, we train so far over 250 people from all different backgrounds and sectors to get into digital. And like seeing those people, we had people, the kind of idea was seeing people go from McDonald's to get a job in tech. And like that was like our pitch brief. In our first cohort, we had someone from McDonald's who then who did the course, left McDonald's and got a job in their agency. Wow. And like for me, like that fills me with so much like satisfaction and feeling that like if you can continue to do that and scale that, like motivation becomes endless.
So roughly how many founders are you working with at the moment?
So far, we're working with 10 founders in the Fearless business, and our aim this year for the academy is to put another 1,000 people through it.
Wow, amazing.
So, yeah, my goal before I was 30, I think I raised it when I was 27, was like, as long as I can like positively impact 30 people's lives, I'll do a good job. And that's how I kind of like motivate myself, is like trying to do good and do the right thing. And like we all talk about kind of like conscious capital and like what like investors and their mindsets. Like, yeah, you 100% you can do the right thing and make a lot of money. Like let's not skirt around the edges here. Things have got to be highly commercial, but I believe now like we can you can do the right thing and make a lot of money, and those two things are not separate, mutually exclusive.
And do you work with a certain sector or certain types of businesses?
So when we look at investing in businesses, we look at all sectors, sector agnostic. We've got 5 of our businesses are female backed. So we found that just by nature, we seem to appeal to those type of founders. In the academy, we look at I think 48% of people from underprivileged backgrounds, and 85% of people who go through the academy have had a job or a positive outcome in the last 6 months. Brilliant. So yeah, agnostic, completely agnostic in terms of areas, but tends to, for some reason, our model of like offering that kind of support and cash has tended to let itself to founders who are a bit more open-minded.
Brilliant. Any more questions from the floor, Gary?
Another good one from Tanuvi, just brought one in. What makes a fearless founder?
Yeah, so I can bore you all day about the criteria and go into that kind of technicalities of what the FCA have signed us off for a fund. But ultimately, from my perspective, like the founders we want to back are ones where when you are investing, you are backing the founder. When we wrote that business plan on a piece of paper, there was no like way of sticking to it, and the world changes and everything changes so quickly that you've got to make sure that you're backing someone who you believe can adapt to that change, and therefore the business that they're running can adapt and grow in that change. So all you are backing in any business is the founder. Speaking from experience, business plans, they're all guesses. Every forecast is a guess. There's no one who sat there and wrote a forecast and like, this is definitely going to happen 100%. So, you are working to best assumptions in a lot of situations, but one thing you can understand is the founder you're backing. So, I think that's the most important due diligence any investor ever does, is understanding the founder and making sure they're the kind of right person. And from our perspective, with Fearless, we try and back the best founders, and I guess the business in the area and the sector does come second to them.
Does it help to have a co-founder, or is it?
It definitely helps. Yeah, I think I don't think I'd be able to do my journey without a co-founder. I've got a lot of admiration for solo founders. A lot of admiration. I've got even more admiration for solo founders who realise they're solo founders.
It's lonely at the top.
And lonely at the top, but they surround themselves with other people. They very quickly go and get advisors and a board, and they shape themselves with other thoughts. Solo founders who have not done that so much and kind of are quite linear in their thinking of themselves. I've seen a couple of red flags in that situation. But the more people looking at problems from different backgrounds, the more diversity at the top of solving issues, the better businesses will be.
Yeah, brilliant.
Another one here from, I'll apologise in advance if I pronounce your name terribly, from Andras. How would you change... I got it. Good, thank God. Thank you. Right, so how would you change your approach to starting a business today, considering the availability of new tools and resources, for example, ChatGPT? Yeah,
I think the one resource I don't think has changed too much is human capital. I still think human capital is really, really important. My approach in that area would be to bring in senior team quicker, and probably start with a managed senior team before bringing in a junior team, because they will help shape your thinking when it comes to any product or any service or anything you're selling. When it comes to other areas around, ChatGPT and AI and the use of that, I think having the right people around the table will help you figure out whether you can run something leaner and not having to, then bring in additional human capital for problems that you need to solve in the future. So probably, it would be go out there and hire the best people in that area, work with those people in the area, make sure they've got a structure where they're invested and remunerated based on the success of the company, and then ask them to figure out the problems that the future is going to face with whatever you're trying to do or trying to sell.
Another one here, unfortunately doesn't have a name, but another great question. As founders, you're always told to keep knocking on doors and facing rejection. At what stage do you know when to quit and that the idea won't be successful?
God, when do you know when to quit? So, the concept of quitting is really interesting. I think it's, a lot of people think it's a negative. You say, quit. I think what you've got to see every single knock as is not rejection, but as feedback. And if you're knocking on 100 doors with the same idea and every single person is saying the same thing, and then you knock on the 101st door and it's the same idea and the same concept and you're getting rejected again, that's when you need to take the feedback on and change what you're doing. So I would say it's not necessarily about quitting, it's actually about understanding that rejection is feedback, and therefore you have to take what you're doing and apply it to that information. So if the market is saying one thing and you're trying to say the other thing, and you are dead set on this idea being correct, and the market's saying, no, it's not correct, you should do it like this or change it like this, and you're not taking that on, you're probably not the best person to run the business, because what you're trying to say and what you're trying to do is not what the market needs. So I would say, always take on feedback, always use rejection as feedback, and always change your pitch and your position and what you're trying to achieve. When it comes to sat there and the tools are down and you're tired and you're thinking quitting's an option, again, all you've done in that time is learn, and you can then apply that to something else. So there's never a situation where I see quitting as a negative. It's either, rejection is either feedback and then you evolve what you do, or if you're in a situation where you feel like you're at the end of the line, you've done so much more than other people have had in their life because you put yourself out there, and that is not quitting, that's success.
One more anonymous question, but thank you again. What do you think is the next frontier?
It's AI, isn't it? We're in it right now. So you go on the newspaper, you go on every single thing. It comes into daily conversations around what is happening with AI and where it's going to go. So for me, that's where, if you're an expert in that now, and I am not an expert in it, and I will probably never be an expert in it, the opportunities for you in the next couple of years are going to be completely exponential. So that's where to spend its time. And we might see that AI is, not what everyone lives out to be. In 2 years' time, it fades away, and maybe something like robotics comes around, and we're all using robots like they said in the movies. So these frontiers always evolve and change. But right now, AI is hot. Every single investor talks about it. A lot of investors don't understand it, but they tend to understand it. So I think if I was 18 right now, what would I do? Probably spend my entire time trying to figure out what AI is and how I'm going to utilize it in the life.
Yeah.
One final one, because I can smell pasties. In the early days, when all you're hearing is no, how did you know to carry on?
How do we know to carry on? So I don't think there's probably one time when it was like, okay, we're going to pack this in. And that was, when I first dropped out of university, I took a year out. And it was coming up to that September time when I had to make a decision whether I'm going to stay doing this thing or whether I'm going to go back to university. And it was probably in the June time, so a couple of months before that decision had to be made, where I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to university. And what basically happened is Wall Park, which was the kind of first thing we did, kind of failed. And we had these social media pages, and we were just creating content for the fun of it. And it wasn't going anywhere. It felt really, really stagnant. And both Steve and I had moved back to our parents. We were sat at home, speaking. And I felt, what's the point? What's the point of carrying on? I can go back to university and have an easy life. And then we had a couple of things where, I think what we probably took were, when you get a small shoot of like opportunity, for us that was like a massive tree. We grabbed onto that like tiny little detail of like this guy who was paying us £1,000 a month to write articles. I'm like, okay, this is it. Let's make this everything. And that shoot effectively grew. And so how do we know to carry on? I think the one thing that differentiates me from every single entrepreneur, a lot of entrepreneur stories, is like I had nothing to lose. I'm at home with my parents at 19 years old. Like I had nothing to lose. So like there was no reason to quit because there was there was nothing to lose. So that makes me have huge admiration for founders later on in life, founders with kids, wives, mortgages. Like I've never been in that situation where you've got to make difficult decisions based on livelihood and stuff. So I have huge respect for founders who are in those situations. But how do we know to carry on? Yeah, delusion, blind faith, hope, and self-belief. We had to believe in ourselves, and coming at that point of quitting, what I knew is the more time I spend learning in this area and the more I spend doing, the more it's going to be an advantage in the future. So for me, it was never about like quitting necessarily. It was just about maximising the time that we'd learn and do something, and then in future that's going to pay dividends.
Brilliant. Well, we're starting to run out of time, but a couple of quick fire questions for you.
Go on.
Do you have a favourite or best business book that you've read?
Yeah, my favourite book I've read, should obviously plug Steve's new book. That's a great book.
It's been out a day.
Yeah. But my favourite book I've ever read is Chimp Paradox by Stephen Peters.
Yeah.
I think that's a really powerful book for anyone who's in business.
Nice, okay. What is your best day at work? And the reason I asked this question, so Naily, who's one of your speakers coming up, she asked me this question on a podcast, and it's actually really hard to think of a day. So thank you, Naily, for the question inspiration.
We spoke with him the other day, and the best day in work was 9th of May, 2016.
Why?
It's the day my wife started working there.
Oh.
She wasn't my wife then, but she walked into the office that day, and then we got married 2 months ago. So that was our best day.
Ah, that's nice. Are you a morning person or a nighttime person? Again, another
morning
question.
person. I gets to let's say on the whoop, gets to 9:30, I'm in bed.
And most importantly, which is very important for the Cornish community, on your scone, cream first or jam first? Be careful with your answer.
I cut my scone right there. Cut my scone. Cream.
Correct. All right.
Yeah.
No,
who puts jam first?
Correct.
but I'm like anti strawberry jam. Has to be raspberry jam.
Oh no, we can't be friends, I'm afraid.
Ooh.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming
No
all this way to talk to us. It's been really, really, really great to get to know you, and thank you so much for sharing your story. Please give Dom a warm hand.